welcome to this awesome edition of Fringe Pod. Really thrilled to be here doing this for the second year in a row, having a great conversation with some incredible disabled artists that have amazing shows at Fringe. So I'm Beck Young. I'm the Chief Exec at Access2Arts, which is the state peak body for disability arts in South Australia. Thrilled to be here having this conversation with you all. I would really like to kick off by just acknowledging that we are meeting on Kaurna Yurta today. So we are meeting on the lands of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains, who have an incredible connection to these lands. And I would like to acknowledge their elders past and present, but also acknowledge that Aboriginal culture has given us an incredible legacy of 60,000 years of dance and art and painting, and we are incredibly grateful to have that. And also just to acknowledge that Aboriginal people are significantly more likely to have disabilities, so we need to make sure in all of our accessible practice that we are considering our First Nations people. So I'd love to now introduce you to my great panellists. So on the end, we have queer Adelaide icon Yozi.
Wow.
Yozi is an autistic, non-binary artist living and working in this lovely Kaurna land, and has been part of Adelaide Fringe since 2010. And recently toured their solo show, No Babies in the Sauna, which I'm quite intrigued by, to both Prague and Edinburgh Fringe. So really looking forward to finding out more about what Yozi's been up to. We also, next to Yozi, have the rising star of the UK theatre landscape, Selena Mersey, who is a musical comedy powerhouse, creating multidisciplinary performance exploring gender and sexuality. So welcome, Selena. Thanks for being our international guest star. And next to me, we have a first-timer. So Max Ullman is starring in their debut cabaret show at this year's Fringe, sharing their unique perspective on their experience of becoming disabled due to chronic illness during their teenage years. A story that I'm sure lots of people in this room will resonate with. So I'm really looking forward to finding out a bit more about that too.
Thank you.
So I'm going to start with you, Max. Mm-hmm. Because it's early days, but I know that a lot of disabled performers talk a lot about their own disability, their own experiences in their shows. How are you going about telling your personal stories, and how does that feel? Are you feeling comfortable with that? How are you going to manage that side of things?
At the moment, most of the content is coming through the lens of light-hearted anecdotes, humour. For example, sharing my experiences first becoming chronically ill through song, detailing all the places I've passed out. Not fun, lots of very silly places. Having like satire, comedy about shitty medical professionals, and then also through the lens of just me talking directly to my audience about how difficult it actually is. So going through the lens of humour, but also connection, and communicating directly with my audience to share my truth, and be as vulnerable as possible, but also be jovial, silly, lighthearted when it's a possibility to do so.
Amazing. Have you shown any of your friends your show yet?
Indeed, I have. I actually had my birthday party where I sat down all of my friends and said, I'm going to preview my show to you, which was last weekend. And
happy birthday.
Thank you. I had a lot of great feedback, and everyone was hysterically laughing at some of the content. So it was good to have that sort of feedback of just people laughing at my content, so I know that it's not people sitting there going, oh, and being really uncomfortable.
Did any of your friends let you know if they felt a little enlightened as to what your journey's really been like after seeing it?
Actually. I have a song called Trust Me, I'm a Doctor. I won't reveal too much, come see the show. But one of my friends actually came to me afterwards and said, look, I'm not chronically ill, I'm not disabled, but you sang this song and I felt so seen. And I was like, that's perfect. That's great, that's what I wanted, because a lot of people can relate to disabled experiences and be able-bodied and neurotypical. So it was great to see that I'm efficiently catering to everyone.
Awesome. Yes, I think terrible medical experiences are
Yes, indeed.
a universal truth,
Yes.
unfortunately,
Yeah.
but not necessarily as frequent for some people.
Yeah.
So, Selena, have you found any kind of enlightening moments telling your personal stories on stage?
Ooh, yes. Interestingly enough, I don't talk a lot about my experience of disability through my work, but I feel like it comes out anyway because it's impossible not to when you're making things. I, for a while, was really struggling with how to make my work as accessible as possible for the audience. And I was really stressing about it for ages. And then my partner, who is also a comedian, said something to me which has really stuck with me, which is that it is just completely impossible to make something that is accessible to everyone, because what is accessible for one person makes it inaccessible for another. And they also pointed out that I was making it really inaccessible for myself by stressing so much about it. So for example, to be clear about my disability, I am autistic and I have ADHD. And I was like, oh, maybe I do a relaxed performance, and then other autistic people can come watch, and but then am I going to get really stressed out about I'm not going to be able to focus because things are moving and the lights, and my partner was like, you need to do the show. You need to be able to do the show. So yeah, that was pretty enlightening. It sounds kind of obvious, but just the realization that you need to put yourself first when you're performing. Understand what your own needs are, and then any additional sprinklings you can add in are a bonus, and appreciated, I think.
Absolutely. And what about you, Yoz? How I know that you have said before that you don't explicitly talk about disability in your show, but you kind of feel that people get the vibe.
Yeah, sort of similarly to Selena, where it's not something I set out to talk about, but it's unavoidable when writing from your perspective. And I find that the people, the girls that get it kind of thing. There's no mention of autism in my show, but it is about autism. And I had a reviewer, an autistic reviewer, who within five minutes of the show was like, oh, you're pretending. I'm playing an elderly clown mother who is trying to create a balloon animal, and also my character who wants to be the balloon animal and be molded by someone who knows the rules. And they're like, oh, this is about autism. I'm like, that wasn't even an intentional metaphor. But also with Access, relaxed performances, I was very stressed about my first one, but then realized that it was also a relaxed performance for me. I didn't need to be as on, and it felt more like a conversation than a performance a lot of the time. So unavoidable, I guess.
Absolutely. And relaxed performances is one of those things we're talking about more and more, and it is really interesting because there isn't a set checklist, and very much can be dependent on what audience you're working towards that relaxed performance for. But it is really interesting. Selena, I know you're really passionate about how we make festivals like Fringe more accessible for artists. Can you talk a little bit about sort of maybe some of the barriers that you find working in big festivals?
Oh yeah, I can talk about barriers all day long. I think in Fringe festivals specifically, compared to like programmed professional festivals, a lot of the time it's very DIY. We're freelancers. We're maybe doing it for the first time or doing things our own way. And a lot of the time there's a huge time pressure because there's a lot of shows being crammed into a venue and it all moves really quickly. And I find that can be really inaccessible for someone with the brain a little bit like mine. I think it's kind of wrapped up in the nature of a Fringe festival because it's DIY and it's quick and it's it's slapdash and it's happening. And I'm pretty interested in how we can, if we can, break that down a little bit and make it a bit more relaxed, a bit calmer. I'm not sure where the solution is, but it's something I've noticed over the past few years of working behind the scenes and being a performer. Any ideas?
Yoz?
Well, I think it's exactly the same boat. Being a producer performer it's so overwhelming. I don't know if it would be possible, but having maybe people a part of who work for Fringe or for the venues that can advocate as producers. And I know it's hard when you know your show, but maybe you download, info dump your show on them for an hour and then they can help you tick all the boxes and meet all those deadlines, rather than watching them go by and then internalizing all of that failure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think with it being DIY, you end up taking on a lot of responsibility, especially as a self-produced artist, and it can feel like there's just too much to balance sometimes. You're doing like 12 people's full-time jobs.
Yeah.
You're writing it and you're performing it and you're producing it and you're marketing it and you're doing the PR and you're just doing like not
So much.
a human amount, right? And you have to sacrifice something, and that might be your sleep or eating properly, and that's just not okay. And then when you've got a disability on top of that, it's not possible. But I really like this idea. I like the idea of Fringe potentially providing I guess support for hire. Yeah. I mean, things like this are fantastic. And I know that Brighton Fringe back in the UK do something called Fringe Academy, which is kind of similar and teaches performers and producers those sort of essential skills. I think we need more of this sort of thing to support people who are just juggling way too much.
Yeah, I think the Honeypot team at Fringe do some really interesting stuff, but definitely are always open to suggestions and ideas of new and excellent supports they can give. So we'll definitely can talk to the Fringe team about that, because that would be great. And one of the reasons at Access to Arts that we wanted to start having these conversations is to give an opportunity to get some more disabled artists in the room, sort of talking about their experiences, but also to get a room full of people that can connect and talk to each other and start building those relationships. Because I think, we have an incredibly strong disability arts community in South Australia, and we need to give the opportunity for emerging artists, for established artists, for visiting artists to all connect to each other and start providing those kind of supports. And, Adelaide's a city that kind of runs on connections, so the more we can connect people. How have you found producing your first show?
Fun, but also very stressful. I have been really lucky that I've had a lot of support from the people at Fringe. And like you guys said, Fringe is just so fast and busy, which partly is like the fun of it. Like I love how quick it is, how fast everything goes, but then also it's so hard to de-stress and sort of find time for like winding down in between things, which is something I'm trying to navigate at the moment with like seeing shows, finishing my own show, performing my show. So yeah, it's difficult to navigate, but it's also fun, and like it's a job that I want to continue. So like I'll continue doing it for sure.
Awesome. That's great. Yoz, you started out with Fringe. How did your journey commence? Did Fringe play a part in that?
Well, my first memory of performing which I think definitely gave me some complex, was in kindergarten, where they asked me to be the one Rudolph out of all of the kids. So I was the one with the red nose, and that's just kind of transformed into a clown nose.
Stood out ever since.
Yeah. I think that very much was like, oh, I'm special. And then in high school, I got the opportunity to do a vocational education training course, so I could earn high school credits by shadowing a theatre company called the Company of Muses, where I got to be like an extra in their massive show, and then the next year they cast me in their show when I was still in high school, and I just kind of I got the bug, got obsessed. Went to Edinburgh when I was in my early 20s and was like, okay, well, I am ill with this impulse to just keep showing off in all these fringes around the world. And Adelaide Fringe is just it's such a good creative deadline, I think. And living here makes it so easy and accessible, especially I was super privileged to have so many friends over the years that either ran venues or spaces that could be venues, and so it took a lot of the financial sort of pressures away, and just made it an easy playground for me to try weird things.
Which is what we love about Fringe, all
Yeah.
the weird things. Is this your first time to Adelaide, Selena?
It's my first time in Australia.
Exciting.
It's very exciting. It's very hot and sweaty, but I'm having a lovely time. Yeah.
Excellent. And how did Fringe festivals over in the UK have a part to play in your creative blossoming?
Yeah, for sure. I actually have a musical theatre background. That's what I sort of started out doing. And then I thought, I'm going to be a musician. And then I went to uni for that, and then I quit. And then I went, I'm going to be a songwriter. And then I quit uni again. At this point, I didn't know I had ADHD. I changed my degree like 3 times. And then I had a band at one point, and this memory like stays in my head. We played a gig in Manchester in the UK, and someone came up to me afterwards and was like, that was so funny. And I was like, what? They were like, that's so cool. You never really see like musical comedy acts, in spaces like this. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then I sort of accidentally became a musical comedian. And then I was doing like burlesque as a hobby, and then it all just sort of came together when I moved to Brighton and started working for Brighton Fringe. And I didn't know that Brighton Fringe existed before I moved to Brighton. I'd heard of Edinburgh Fringe, and someone said to me, oh yeah, that must be why you came to Brighton, right? Because Brighton Fringe and you're a creative. I was like, what's that? And I started working behind the scenes for them, and watching artists do that thing every year. I think it took like 3 or 4 years of working in the box office for me to like work up the courage to write and produce my own show. And I'm really, really glad that I took the plunge. I was so scared to do it. And I remember I met some great people through Brighton Fringe as like the person behind the window helping them sell tickets. That's how I met a lot of my comedian friends. And I remember one of them saying like, hey, yeah, you should make your own show. And I was like, I really want to, but the deadline's approaching and I haven't got anything and I don't feel ready. And he said, oh, no one's got the show ready by the deadline. You just apply and then you make it. The deadline is pressure. And like you said, it's a really useful deadline to have every year. And so, yeah, that's my advice is apply with nothing. Yeah, it's a great encouraging thing.
Amazing. And Max, being an Adelaide person, has Fringe always sort of been on your radar?
Yeah, as a kid, I actually hated Fringe. I just found it so overwhelming. My parents would take me into the garden and I would be like, this is horrible, this is so loud, I don't know what's going on. And then we would see circus acts where the performers would like come like really close to you and like interact with you. And I was like, get away from me. I later found out I was autistic. And then I grew up a little bit more, found that the arts and music was something I really enjoyed. I was involved in Girls Rock Adelaide's rock camp a few years. And that just like opened a door to me where I was like, oh my goodness, there's so many people like me and they all like music and it's great. And then I was in my own band. From when I was 15, I was playing shows, which I think now is like kind of crazy. And then in year 11, I was lucky enough to be a part of Class of Cabaret, which kick-started me into this like frenzy where I was just so adamant on writing feminist cabaret, and that's what I did.
That's awesome. It is interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, we have such an incredible, diverse, eclectic group of artists throughout Adelaide.
Absolutely.
But Fringe, absolutely, you know, every single one of you has talked about kind of how overwhelming it can be. How do we create more space for more people in these places? You know, how do we take these conversations about disability and access to the next level? Does anyone have any ideas, things they want to say? Yoz?
I think it's definitely getting there. I guess the acknowledgement maybe of, especially with neurodivergent artists, that there's a level of inconsistency potentially on responding and then maybe being able to do 4 weeks worth of things in an hour and a half. It doesn't mean that we're not interested, it just means that we are severely overwhelmed. But from my experience in the last few years, like maybe it's the venues and the people I've been speaking to, they've been super understanding of that and there's less pressures. I think it's as much about educating, you know, the venues and the festival as it is really learning what you need as an artist. Because I really had no idea why I was getting severely burnt out and freaking out every day and not being able to leave my bed until a few years ago. I'm like, oh, this is why I keep writing comedies about robots that are trying to understand comedy. Unintentional metaphors. So yeah, I think it's just understanding is really the first thing.
Absolutely. Selena, any
Hello.
thoughts?
Yeah, I think similarly to what you were saying earlier about people who don't necessarily have a disability relating to your song about disability, I think often access measures benefit everyone, not just people with disabilities.
Absolutely.
And I think we need to do a lot more implementation of access measures just across the board. Again, with things being really hectic during Fringe time, it can be hard, but I think venues throughout the year, if they learn a bit more about this sort of thing and train up their staff, and again, it's hard because freelancers are coming in and out, but I don't know, maybe we need some sort of central resource for freelancers to learn about this. And then when it comes to Fringe time, they know what they're doing and they're on it. I recently started to make an access rider for the first time, which was a terrifying thing to do because it felt very like demanding and like I was being a diva, which is ridiculous because it's just asking for what you need. And if anyone doesn't know, an access rider is just a document that says like, hey, this is what I need. And you can disclose your disability in it, or you can choose not to do that. But yeah, I've been exploring that, looking at a few different examples, just writing things down like, can people please not talk over each other in the same space during a technical rehearsal? Because my brain will just go, Windows noise, do, and I will not be able to comprehend anything. And yeah, maybe I just need to shed the fear of looking like a diva. But the few times that I have presented an access rider to people, they've been like, oh yeah, absolutely. We'll circulate this round to our staff and everyone gets it. And like, yeah, I think sometimes we need a bit more confidence in asking, knowing what we need, like you said, and then asking for it. And then the more that we talk about that and demand it, perhaps that's how we normalise this sort of thing with venues and back of house people.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And look, I mean, if anyone can be divas, surely it should be us.
Yes, absolutely.
Have you had a go at looking at developing an access rider?
I haven't even thought about it, but the second you said it, I had like a light bulb moment and I was like, this is genius. Although this year I am lucky to be in a venue run by disabled creatives, so I feel like it's not necessarily as important as it would be for someone like you who's traveling, who, I don't know, if you're in the gardens or like if you're in a tent or something, like that would be so stressful, kudos to you. But yeah, I feel like definitely as I get further into my career and I do move into the gardens for shows or I move into venues I'm less familiar with, that's something I will definitely look into doing, because I also find it hard to advocate for myself, but I also, on the other side of the coin, am aware that advocating for yourself and accommodating yourself and ensuring that other people do the same isn't being a diva, it's just looking after yourself. But that's a whole journey in itself, like learning that sort of, like unlearning that, you know, asking for accommodations and advocating for yourself is like evil or too much when it's really just the bare minimum.
Max, do you have an access rider? Max. Yozzy, do you have an access rider? It's
What
more
are they
gaffer tape, isn't
making
it?
over
It just
here?
wants to know how hungry I am. No, I don't currently. I think I've attempted to write them, but like by the third or fourth line I'm writing, like, no one can yell at me. And I'm like, this, I think, yeah. I wear these to sort of take out some of the extra sensory light, which is super helpful and means I can wear them at nighttime and look cool.
Yeah, you just look cool wearing them.
Yeah.
And then carry around like noise cancelling headphones if I get too overwhelmed. A lot of my requirements are just really just fundamental self-care things, like make sure I've slept enough and drunk enough water and eaten. Otherwise it's setting myself up for the best day possible every day is hard, but every day, you gotta do it.
Wow, absolutely.
Also, my director back in the UK, she gave me some advice once, which has stuck with me, and you've just reminded me of it then. It's once I was really stressing out in a rehearsal about, but I want this and I want this and I want this, and there's not enough time to implement it all. And she said, okay, let's make a list of like the show cannot go on without these things, and nice to have. And I feel like we need to do that sometimes with access requirements and, like you said, setting yourself up for the best day possible every day. What do you absolutely need to go on? What could you not do the show without? Sleep, food, water, things like that. And then nice to have, you know?
So
Yeah.
good to know.
I used
shout
to
out
be
Annie, she's great.
so anxious before performances that I couldn't eat for 5 or 6 hours before performing.
Yes, so relatable.
And I would just end up feeling terrible after the show every single time. Last year, I was like, I didn't eat breakfast or lunch, and then I was in that 6-hour window, and I'm like, I need to eat, otherwise I'm not going to. And I ate like an hour before my show for the first time ever, and everything was fine. In fact, I felt better. So now I eat as much as I want before I perform, and yeah, my fear was that the anxiety would I didn't want to give my anxiety any fodder to sort of make my show more interactive. But it's a baseless fear. It's never happened.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, and it's so interesting because some access needs are actually there for everybody, like food and water, but also, you know, things that often are tricky in Adelaide Fringe in particular, in Adelaide in summer is Jackie and I were delivering some training at the Garden of Earthly Delights a couple of weeks ago. It was on the day that my car said it was 48.5 degrees. So, you know, being able to be really clear with venues if you need to be in an air-conditioned space, and, you know, a lot of those access needs, like I need a chair, I need some aircon, are not necessarily over and above big, weird, wonderful things. You know, you're not asking for, you know, 700 blue Skittles.
Well, you're not.
I don't
Turns
think
out
blue
my
Skittles exist. So
my fears about being a diva are totally
totally. totally. Now, Max, I noticed that you are wearing a lovely green and yellow sunflower lanyard.
I am indeed.
How are you finding your experiences with that? Are you finding it more recognised now?
I think yes. I actually found out about it years before I identified as disabled or had a chronic illness. And at that point, I think it was only recognised in the UK. I don't know. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe the US, I don't know, somewhere. And I originally learnt about it, and it was sort of promoted as something that people would use in airports, train stations, and that sort of thing. And then a few years down the track, I was at Westfield Marion and saw that they were a sunflower lanyard inclusive space. And I was like, wait, this is in Australia now, this is great. And then found out that they give them away for free at the concierge desk. And I was like, yeah, I'll take one of those, thank you. And while I don't necessarily need accommodations 100% of the time while I'm out, I wear it more so because then other disabled people are like, ha, yes, you are me and I am you, because that's what I feel and think when I see another person wearing a lanyard. I'm like, yeah, we're a secret club, we're a secret community, I got you got me. And it's sort of just a way to be like, yeah, just share community. And I am giving these away at my show. I'm doing little care packages for my audience members for free. Gonna add like little electrolyte packages. These hopefully compression socks if I can buy them in bulk. Come to my show. I love how excited you are. Thank you for giving my idea the recognition it deserves. Yeah, so I just wanted to be able to give back to my audiences, and that was just one sure way that I knew that I could, especially with grant money. Use it for good, use it to give back to my audiences. But yeah, I love my little lanyard. Sunflower's my favourite flower, so.
That's awesome. And I noticed that yours is wearing sunflower overalls, so who needs a lanyard when you can just go head to toe?
Hey, I have a tattoo. Me too. Really? Sunflower?
Yeah.
And you know, one of the things that I love so much about our incredible disability arts community is how much everyone does care for each other. So, you know, it's so beautiful that you're caring for your audience. So I just sort of, to wrap up really, I think I really appreciate all of your incredible input today. I think having these conversations more and more frequently is really important. I also think I'll keep advocating for someone to take on some sort of disabled artist management because, you know, that's something that we hear a lot about, and we know that there's a lot of people looking for that sort of support. And, you know, from an Access to Arts perspective, we'll keep knocking on the doors of all the venues and working with Fringe to make sure that they can meet their goal of becoming the most inclusive festival in the world. But I would encourage everyone here to keep having these conversations, keep talking to people about your access needs. If you do come across closed doors, please feel free to reach out to us at Access to Arts, because we can support you to do some of that advocacy. And also, the more that we know about what's happening around in our community, the more that we can make sure that we're having those conversations with people that can make change, because we really want to make change, and we really want to make sure that as an artist, Fringe is the best festival you can possibly come to, and that you have those connections and communities. So we'll keep trying to connect everyone. But do make sure that you connect with us at Access to Arts, and please make sure you come and see all of these amazing shows.
I'll give you free things. There might be cake.
What a sweetener.
Oh my God, I'm going to come.
What a sweetener.
There might be cake.
But yeah, so Max will be sharing their unique perspective on their journey through teenage years with chronic illness and becoming disabled, and really allowing people to feel seen and share that journey. So please do come along to 16.
Yes.
Now I'm going to just read yours out, because I really love this get in the tiny car, loser. We're going to clown school.
That's brilliant.
Sit shotgun with this feral raconteur for a multi-award-winning joyride of physical comedy, peculiar rules and chaotic characters. Honk honk.
Hell yeah.
So
Honk honk.
I'm
honk honk.
convinced the honk honk really sealed the deal for me.
So as I said, Yoz is back from Edinburgh, Prague. You know, people around the world have been enjoying this show, so make sure you get to see it while it's here. So come and see No Babies in the Sauna. Also very intriguing.
Sauna.
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 Yes.
Love it. And Selena has just finished a run of one of her 2 shows, but you can get along to see Selena in Bisexual. Now, it is only on until Sunday. I believe there may be an audio described performance as well.
On Sunday.
On Sunday. And it is at the Courtyard of Curiosities at the Migration Museum. So come and see how funny her musical comedy actually is. But yes, so I think they will all be great shows. Make sure you get along and see them. Have a chat to the artists about when and where and how. But thank you all very much. Thanks to the audience for coming along. Thank you to the panel. It's been great to meet you all. I can't wait to try and get along to some of your shows.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone.